Welcome to the Horror Next Door. This is all the horror movies we watched in November 2023. Links to our Letterboxd accounts are in the description box below. If you like this video, would you kindly subscribe?
Hell House LLC Origins, The Carmichael Manor from 2023, which is on Shudder. If you've been a part of the Horror Next Door for quite some time, you've probably heard me mention Hell House LLC on multiple occasions. It is actually one of my all-time favorite movies. The sequels, not so much. However, I was still excited for this. I thought it did look better than Hell House 2 and 3, and I would definitely say that it was better than each of those. However, I still didn't love it. It's called Origins, so as you can imagine, they start delving into the background of Hell House LLC, things that occurred before the characters in the first film ever arrived there, lots of detailed explanations. I did write a review about this on Letterboxd if you'd like to read more of my thoughts, but my basic issue with it was, first of all, the main character, and I know I'm not alone here because I've read quite a few of the reviews on Letterboxd, was a frustrating person. She was not likable. My second and biggest complaint about the movie, and I compared it to Paranormal Activity, is the first one scared the crap out of me, and when you start delving into the sequels, it's too much information and it just removes a lot of what makes the original film scary. Some of the decisions they made and what they did with the creepy ass clown from the first one, it was just too much for me personally. I don't want to do any spoilers. I would still recommend the movie, and I'm still gonna watch and love the original, but I don't really see myself watching this one again. I will say that there were definitely super creepy moments. I actually gasped and jumped a couple of times. So again, I do recommend it. It's just nothing compared to the first one. But if you're gonna watch a Hell House sequel, definitely make it this one, not 2, and definitely not 3. Last Shift from 2014, which I watched on my Blu-ray copy. It had just been a long time since I saw this. I really like this movie a lot. In fact, I would say I love it. This is another movie that when I first saw it really creeped me out. It just has non-stop sense of dread and fright. And I just thought it was so well done and very well acted by Juliana Harkavy. She carries the entire movie on her shoulders and she does a fantastic job. I just think this is a very effective and well done film with a lot of memorable imagery. I really don't understand why Anthony DiBlasi, the director, decided to completely remake this movie. I mean, I've seen articles and stuff like that he explained it, but I just don't get it, and I really have no interest in watching the new one. I would just watch this again instead. I very highly recommend this movie. It doesn't have very good ratings on Letterboxd, but my personal opinion is that it's fucking awesome, so I recommend it very highly. The Battery from 2012, which I watched on Vudu. I had just recently watched After Midnight, which had Jeremy Gardner in it, and I was just looking at his collection of films, and I saw that he not only was one of the leads in The Battery, but also directed it. Unfortunately, I was not a fan of this movie. It was extremely boring. It's a zombie film, but there's not a lot going on. We really just follow two guys that are together in a zombie apocalypse type situation, just trying to survive. At one point, they're trapped in a car together, and that was probably the most interesting part of the movie. It just was too slow for me. I couldn't stay engaged. I think both actors did a great job. There were a couple of really weird and gross parts, and I don't mean gross in like a cool zombie gory way. There were parts where it dragged too much. I am still a big Jeremy Gardner fan, and I'm going to keep paying attention to his work, but I don't really recommend this movie. Monster Inside, America's Most Extreme Haunted House from 2023, which is on Hulu. This is a documentary about McCamey Manor. I feel like almost everyone has heard of McCamey Manor at some point now, even people that are not interested in haunted attractions or horror. I went through a phase years and years ago where I was extremely interested in McCamey Manor because I just did not understand why people wanted to put themselves through something like that. I have seen YouTube videos about this. I'm kind of over it, but I was curious because, you know, curiosity killed the cat. I just don't think there was a lot of new information here for people that have already heard, read, or watched things about McCamey Manor. I actually sought out another very extensive and detailed YouTube video after watching this because I just felt like it was lacking something. I felt like it didn't have much information, and then there was like this weird plug for a different quote-unquote haunt that's extreme like this, where it's sort of verbal and physical abuse, and they do all those crazy things. And I thought, is this just a big ad for that? Or I don't understand. Anyway, I don't really recommend this unless you're going in completely blind and know nothing about McCamey Manor. There is way more interesting stuff about McCamey Manor on YouTube. So just look it up on there and watch some videos on there if you're interested in this topic. That's my recommendation. Possession Diaries from 2019, which I watched on Vudu. Shout out to my Letterboxd pal Horror Sage for his review on this because he is the reason that I watched this movie. When I was in the midst of watching this and when it ended, I just didn't really know how I felt about it because it was so infuriating and at the same time so entertaining. This movie really cannot even be explained. We do often talk about the so bad it's good Neil Breen, Tommy Wiseau type films on this channel, and Possession Diaries makes my list of so bad it's good. I was still thinking and laughing about and quoting this movie days after watching it, so that means it qualifies as a terrible movie that is actually good and enjoyable to watch. Is it competently made, acted, written, anything? No, but you will probably have a blast watching it if you're into the so bad it's good movies. So I do recommend it. I Trapped the Devil from 2019, which was watched on Tubi. I had this movie on my watch list for an extremely long time. The premise is that a man thinks he has the devil trapped in his basement, and when his brother and I believe his wife or girlfriend, I can't remember which, I'm sorry, show up at his house, they find him basically acting cuckoo. The film definitely constantly leaves you wondering if the guy is crazy or if what is in his basement really is something evil and sinister. This is definitely a slow burn movie that leaves a lot to the imagination. It's open-ended, it's open to interpretation, and I like movies like that, so I personally would recommend it. The Cleaning Lady from 2018, which was watched on Tubi. The premise of this and the poster just sort of sound and look silly, but I was actually pleasantly surprised by this movie. The main character hires a cleaning lady almost in a way to distract herself or make herself feel better about things that she has guilt or remorse about. She's looking to help this girl and hires her as her cleaning lady. I guess she sort of feels sorry for the girl because she has burn scars all over her face. They start becoming friendly and like she's giving her clothes and putting makeup on her and things like that, but it does a single white female type thing where the cleaning lady starts getting really infatuated with her and stuff, and then things get crazy and weird. I do recommend the movie. It's exactly 90 minutes. It's a short watch. I don't think you'll regret watching it, and hopefully you will be pleasantly surprised like I was if you do. Dead of Winter from 2014, which was watched on Tubi. The synopsis of this specifies that the people in this film are doing a treasure hunt in the wilderness of Colorado, which is my home state, so that immediately intrigued me. Also, November is just that time of year. It's getting close to Christmas. I just sort of wanted to start watching cold and snowy movies. This is actually listed as just a thriller on Letterboxd, not really a horror, and I can see that, but it's still worth talking about. There's gore, there's death, there's blood. It wasn't the most impressive thing I've ever seen. A lot of the characters were just really unlikable, so whether or not they survived doesn't really matter. I also had a bit of a suspicion as far as one of the big reveals they had in there. That made it a little bit less fun. Of course, I didn't know the reason behind it, so it is what it is. I loosely recommend this movie. Centigrade from 2020. This is a film that we talked about in one of our trailer videos that we were excited to see. I saw a lot of people on Letterboxd complaining about the film being boring. I didn't find it boring. I thought it was tense. I thought it was well acted. It's only 89 minutes long, so it's definitely not as boring as something like, say, Dune from 2021, which felt like an eternity to get through. A couple of things came to my mind watching this movie. The first one being an Emily Blunt film called Wind Chill from 2007, where there is also a man and a woman trapped in a car in the freezing snowy cold. Another thing it reminded me of was Alive from 1993, where there are people trapped out in the snow and freezing in a crashed plane. This movie doesn't quite live up to either of those things, but I still think it was intense, although at times the characters were frustrating and you just thought, why are you doing that? I thought it was engaging enough to definitely keep me interested the whole time. It's the type of thing you watch and wonder what you would do in that situation. You feel the struggle, you feel the victories, no matter how small. I do recommend the movie.
I really enjoyed this movie, and somewhere towards the beginning of the movie, I think I was looking up the actor and actress on IMDb to just see if I recognized them from anything else, and I discovered in the trivia section that it said that the movie was filmed in order, and they actually had the car inside of a real freezer, so all the cold that you see in the movie is real cold, and the actors actually had to sit there and act out their scenes and everything in real cold, so that's their real breath that you see. It's not CGI and stuff like that. So I actually thought that was pretty wild, and got to give both of them credit for going through something like that. It says that the movie is based on true events, and after doing some searching online, apparently the story is based on a Swedish man that was pulled from a snow-covered car, barely surviving living on snow for 2 months, which is pretty insane. Obviously, in the movie, they make it a couple, and then they add the drama of her being pregnant, which all just seems even worse, even more of a nightmare scenario in my opinion. But this movie was really good. I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it.
Slaughter Daughter from 2012, which I watched on Runtime US Play. That was the only place I could find it for free. What can I say about this movie? Oh my goodness gracious. I can't even remember how I got interested in Nicola Fiore. I think I just watched some random movie on Tubi with her in it, and I thought, she's really pretty. I'm just gonna go see what else she's been in. And then I saw it was mostly all horror movies, and I thought, well, I love horror films, so let me watch these. And almost all of her movies are just so wild and weird and insane and inappropriate and out of the box that I honestly don't even know what to say. What I will say is that Nicola Fiore gives her all in everything, and she did an amazing job in this film, and I think she carried the film. She played a really good psycho to the point where I was actually rooting for her character. Her character's familial ties are strained and screwed up. She gets abandoned at the altar on her wedding day, and I don't know. She's just the kind of likable, crazy person that you want to root for, and I think that's why I kind of like the movie. I would almost say this is so bad it's good territory, and I wouldn't mind watching it again. I especially love the blood-soaked white dress situation as is shown on the poster, at least the one that's on Letterboxd. Personally, because I'm weird and crazy and I'm a fan of Nicola's, I would recommend it, but it's just tread lightly territory. Dysfunction and madness and nudity and inappropriate stuff going on in this movie, so if you plan to watch it, keep that in mind. Speaking of tread lightly territory, I also watched Mr. Bricks, a heavy metal murder musical from 2011. I watched this on Tubi. This also stars Nicola Fiore, and it's actually directed by the same director as Slaughter Daughter, Travis Campbell. There is also a fellow that was in Slaughter Daughter that is in this film. The actor's name is Tim Dax. When I saw the cover of Mr. Bricks, I thought the man with his arms around Nicola on the cover was wearing a helmet or some kind of a mask, but he's actually tattooed like that. His entire skull and face makes it look like he has some kind of a mask on. He is very heavily tattooed, and he's very built. He kind of reminds me of Dave Bautista. Anyway, he's very distinctive looking, so it stood out to me. Mr. Bricks is a trauma film. It's a heavy metal murder musical. What can I say? I wrote a review for this on Letterboxd. I almost just want to refer you straight to that because I just don't know what to say about it. It's so weird. The music is... I guess at times it's catchy, but no one can really sing per se. My dear Nicola, bless her heart. She's so great, but wow. Good for you for having the balls to do this. Good for everyone for having the courage to do this, honestly, because I would be frightened to do any kind of a musical, let alone something like this. Again, we're in a situation where extremely questionable and inappropriate things are happening, and it's almost inexplicable. It just has to be seen to be believed. It's only 76 6 minutes. It's free on Tubi. Basically, I would say if you can get past the first song, go ahead and finish it. If the moment Tim Dax opens his mouth you can't deal, then turn it right off. You can feel the effort that was put into this. If it's for you, it is. If it isn't, it definitely isn't. So proceed with caution, but I am not unhappy that I watched it. So personally, yes, I would recommend it. Botched from 2007, which I watched on a recently purchased DVD. When my dear Netflix DVD announced that it was retiring, and as that day got closer, I started looking through some of my ratings and seeing what movies I gave high ratings to, because they said that when you rented your last few discs, you were welcome to keep them. You didn't have to return them. I was trying to intentionally make sure that I rented films that I enjoyed but are not easy to come by. Either they're not on streaming, which I prefer physical media anyway. I really don't like to rely on streaming. Even if you purchase a movie digitally, it can still be taken away from you. So physical media forever, but I was just trying to find some Netflix discs of films that if I looked them up on Amazon or eBay or wherever and they were super expensive or super rare, out of print, things like that, that I would get them from Netflix. Botched was extremely cheap on Amazon. So instead of using one of my final Netflix rentals, forever rentals, you could call it, on this, I just purchased it. It was $5. It stars Stephen Dorff, who I'm a huge fan of. I actually got to meet him and he's awesome, by the way. He's really sweet. I couldn't remember this movie at all. I remembered a couple of the gory parts, but I did not remember in any way, shape, or form how fucking weird this was. The explanation of what's going on is wild. It's insane. It is so out of left field. No one would ever predict it. It's a fun movie. It's a completely over-the-top movie. I would say the only problem is that if the humor doesn't resonate with you, you're not going to enjoy the film. It both did and didn't for me. I think it more did than didn't though, and I don't know if it's just because I do like Stephen Dorff so much, but I do recommend the movie. Death Proof from 2007, one of the Grindhouse movies. I don't know if the Grindhouse films were on my mind because of the release of Eli Roth's Thanksgiving, which most horror fans know originated as a trailer in the theater release of the Grindhouse films. But I felt like watching this. I love this movie. I don't really necessarily think it's a horror film, but Kurt Russell's character is basically a serial killer, right? He's a murderer. So that's why I feel like it has horror vibes to it. And there is obviously some amazing gore and really intense situations in this. I could not recommend it more highly. I know that a lot of people say there's too much dialogue, too much talking, and it's boring, but I just think all of the actresses are so charming and cute, and they do a great job. I love Zoe Bell, who I also was so lucky to meet, and she was precious. I adore her. She was so cool and so nice, and she's so fucking badass. So are all the chicks in this movie. I also love Kurt Russell. If you haven't seen this movie, I hope that you will check it out, and I hope you're on my side. This is not boring. This is extremely entertaining and badass and awesome. Sadistic Intentions from 2019, which I watched on Tubi. I did remember most of what happened, but I had forgotten a couple of little things that I really liked about this. It's a very entertaining film. I think Taylor Zodka does a great job in this, and her character is so likable. I love her. I really legitimately want to be that character's friend. Also love Jeremy Gardner in this. His character is very interesting and cuckoo. I don't think I liked the movie quite as much as the first time I watched it, but it was still a good time, and I do recommend the film. The stuff about the black metal and the little jokes they make is still fun to me as a black metal fan, so you might like it a little bit more if you're into that too. Devil's Pass, which was watched on Tubi. On Letterboxd, it is listed as the Dyatlov Pass Incident. This movie is from 2013 and directed by Rennie Harlin, who directed Die Hard 2, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and lots of other stuff. I think I was a little bit disappointed in this based on the synopsis. I guess I was expecting a little bit more. It dragged a teeny little bit for me at times, but overall, I think it was definitely a very interesting and enjoyable watch, and I would recommend checking it out, especially over my aforementioned winter film, Dead of Winter. If you were going to choose between the two, if you're on Tubi, pick this one. Paradise Hills from 2019, which was watched on Hulu. The main reason I selected this was because it was listed as being something that was going to expire. Paradise Hills is supposed to be a place where young girls are sent to be reformed and they're sort of controlled, and the whole movie is about Emma Roberts' character finding out what the hell is really going on behind the scenes. This movie was very visually stunning. The ending of this movie went completely insane. I mean, when they first revealed some of the stuff about what they were doing to the girls, I was like, yeah, okay, I get it. That's cool. It sort of reminded me of A Cure for Wellness, but then it goes further and is just, what the fuck? It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. I can definitely see someone knowing in the first 5 minutes of this whether they were going to like it or not. I personally think it was worth watching. I probably would never watch it again. I think if you're a fan of any of the cast, you might dig it, but it's a pretty loose recommendation from me. It mostly just looked really cool. The Free Fall from 2021, which was watched on Hulu. Letterboxd buddy, Horror Sage, getting a second shout out in the same video because he left a comment on one of our videos recommending this film to us. This film had actually been on my Hulu watch list for quite a long while, and it was so interesting that Sage recommended this to us at the time he did, because I literally was hitting play on this movie when someone knocked at my door and derailed my day, so I never got to watch it. Here comes Sage to remind me, hey, you started that movie and you never finished it. So we checked it out and it was awesome. Pretty quickly into this, you just get this feeling that everything is off, everything is weird, you can't tell what's real, you can't tell what's not, you don't know if the main character is imagining things, exaggerating things, interpreting things wrong, dreaming. The reveal at the end is one of the coolest twists I've ever seen. It definitely made me want to rewatch the entire movie, so I left it on my Hulu list. Thank you so much, Sage, for the recommendation, or in my case, reminder. I highly recommend this movie.
I really enjoyed this movie as well, but this movie was a little bit different. I feel like some of the scenes in the movie kind of felt cliche or just kind of cheesy in a way, if you think about it. It wasn't until the twist ending that just changed everything. I've always said in the past that you can have a really great movie and then have a ending that makes it stupid. Or you can have a really bad movie or a mediocre movie and then have an ending that makes it a great movie. I really wasn't blown away by this movie, but then once the ending happened, I was like, wait a minute, this makes all the stuff that came before it hit differently now, because before I just thought it was a cliche thing, but now I'm looking at it differently because of what I know now from the ending, and I really thought that was very clever. I don't want to give anything away. There are things I would like to say, but I don't want to give away the ending, so I'm not going to say them. I feel like this is one of those movies where your first watch, you're probably just going to be whatever about, but after seeing the ending, I feel like watching it a second time would have a completely different impact on it. So maybe one day we could sit down and we could watch this again. Now with the information that we know, things might register differently. So it'd be kind of fun to watch it a second time. But I highly recommend this. Check it out.
Cobweb from 2023, which was also watched on Hulu. This is another film that we talked about in our upcoming horror trailers video. I was really excited to see this. I just thought that Lizzie Kaplan and Anthony Starr looked so freaking creepy, and they were giving me Jack Torrance in The Shining vibes. I loved the way this movie looked. It was filmed beautifully. The cinematography was amazing. The use of silhouettes, shadows, lighting, everything was so well done, and the fall autumn vibes are immaculate. The wardrobe, the weather, all of the frickin' pumpkins in the backyard of their house. I also noticed that the score was very beautiful at times, very well done. I feel like if the explanation of what was going on in this house and the way that the film ended had gone differently, it could have been a 5-star movie for me. The ending just derailed everything for me. I did still very much like the movie, and I would still recommend it. I think it is something I could probably watch again in October in the future, but it wouldn't be a, oh my gosh, I have to watch this every year type of movie. There were also some really cool and weird masks for all the Horror Next Door fans that are into masks, like Psycho is. I do recommend this movie. Maybe that twist is for some people. It wasn't necessarily for me, but it didn't make me hate the movie. I still do like and recommend it.
So I will have to agree with what Hellcat said, that pretty much everything before the last act of the film and the whole ending sequence, everything that happens before that is really well done. The acting, the cinematography, the music, everything is really well done. But then the ending, that last act of the film, is just kind of blah for me. Like, I guess I was expecting more. I don't know. I kind of just feel like they kind of dropped the ball on it a little bit. I feel like maybe they could have gone in a different route and made things a little bit more unique, I guess. I don't know. But I just didn't care for the ending. And like I said, this was a great film throughout. I didn't really have any complaints, really. And then the ending kind of brought it down for me. This could have been easily a 5-star movie or even like a 4.5-star movie. But because of the ending, my rating went down. I think the best part of this movie, in my opinion, is the mother and father characters played by Lizzie Kaplan and Anthony Starr. I think they were great. I think perhaps the ending should have focused something on them. I don't know. I will say this, something that Hellcat pointed out after the movie ended, that the poster is a big spoiler. It's a huge spoiler. And I'm not even sure why the poster shows what it shows, because it kind of gives away an element of the film that's supposed to be, oh, what's coming, but there it is right in the poster. So whatever. I would still recommend this movie, but honestly, could have been so much better.
Planet Terror from 2007, which I watched on my DVD copy. I would say rewatching this solidified my preference for Death Proof as far as the two Grindhouse films go. However, I did still very much enjoy watching this movie again. It is batshit crazy. It is insanely disgusting and gory. I really love the Marley Shelton, Josh Brolin interactions. They're always just so tense and freaky. I remember having the "I'm gonna eat your brains and gain your knowledge" as my little quote on MySpace. Am I too old? Are people even gonna know what I'm talking about? Whatever. This movie is epic. It's so over the top. It's so insane. I love the appearance by Bruce Willis. It's really cool to see Freddie Rodriguez, aka Frederico from my favorite show, 6 Feet Under, being all badass. Rose McGowan's so fucking badass. This movie is just wicked awesome and super gross. I very highly recommend it.
Saw 4 from 2007, which I watched on Blu-ray. So continuing watching all the Saw movies, I watched Saw 4. This was the last one that was directed by Darren Lynn Bousman. He did Saw 2, 3, and 4 before moving on to other films. I think a lot of people don't really care for pretty much any Saw movie after Saw 3, but I actually really like Saw 4. I think the twist at the end of the Saw 4 is very clever. And honestly, I've never seen a movie sequel do something like what Saw 4 ends up doing, which hopefully I'm not spoiling too much. If you haven't seen Saw 4, I'm sure if you're watching this, you've probably seen Saw 4 by now. But it's just interesting that Saw 4 takes place at the same time Saw 3 is taking place. I will just leave it to that. I won't give out any more spoilers, but to me, it's just cool that it takes place at the same time as Saw 3. Obviously, there's flashbacks and things like that, but the main storyline is taking place at the same time of the main storyline from Saw 3. Not all the traps in this movie are as good as some of the previous ones, but overall, I really enjoyed it, and I still would highly recommend this one. Check it out. You're Next from 2011, which I watched on Max. So I was hanging out at my buddy's house one Saturday night, and I don't even remember how this got turned on, but somehow it got turned on and we ended up watching the entire thing. It was really fun to see it again. I haven't seen it in a very, very long time. I do own this on Blu-ray, but when you're just chilling and you're skimming around on streaming services and you're like, hey, you're next, you just hit play. So it is what it is. But this movie is awesome. If you have not seen this movie by now, go check it out. I highly recommend it. The director of You're Next, Adam Wingard, he went on to direct Godzilla vs. Kong, which is just wild if you think about it. If you see You're Next and then you see Godzilla vs. Kong, you're like, wow, these are two completely different worlds. Godzilla vs. Kong was pretty badass, but I still think You're Next is his best film. I think Sharni Vinson is a badass in this movie. There's a couple of shots in the movie, one in particular where she's holding the axe, where she just looks like a complete badass. I love this movie. I can't get enough of it. Go check it out if you haven't. And if you have, and it's been a while, go check it out again. It's awesome. Saw 5 from 2008, which I watched on Blu-ray. The dreaded fifth sequel in all horror franchises. Apparently, the fifth sequel in all horror franchises always has to be that one sequel that is very divisive. Either people love it or people hate it. Friday the 13th Part 5, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Halloween 5. The list goes on. So here we are with Saw 5, and I personally still enjoy this movie. I know it's not up to the standards or quality of the previous Saw films, but I still really enjoy it. I think there's a lot of stuff that gets revealed in this movie. Some of the flashbacks with Hoffman and Jigsaw, and just seeing how Hoffman became involved with Jigsaw and how he seemingly has been around since before the events of Saw 1. And it's pretty interesting seeing some of that stuff. I actually think the opening scene is really cool with the FBI guy with the head trap, with the water filling up. He shoves a pen in his throat to save his life. I think that's just wild. I still like the very last scene of the movie with the room, with the walls closing in and crushing him. There's some good stuff in this movie. I think at the time it was released, a lot of people just said it was crap and moved on, but I think a lot of people should probably give it another shot. It's really not that bad. This Saw entry was directed by David Heckel. If you don't know, he was like the production designer or prop designer or something. I don't know. He was something of that nature for all the previous Saw movies. He designed all the actual traps that you see in the movie. He's the one that made those traps come to life from script to screen, because most of the people involved in the Saw films are like a big family. They gave him the reins to direct this one, and I think he did a good job, but I really enjoyed Saw 5. If you're listening to this and you're like, man, Saw 5 is a piece of crap, go watch it again, give it another shot. If you still don't like it, then whatever, but you never know. There might be something about it that you do like, so go check it out again. Resident Evil Death Island from 2023, which I watched on Netflix. So I'm just going to say right off the bat that I feel like this movie was just kind of average, kind of just right down the middle. I had a lot of fun watching it, but I kind of felt like towards the end it was a little over the top. The CGI obviously looks amazing, and I've been kind of waiting to see this for a couple of months now, so it was cool that it popped up on Netflix. As far as all the CGI Resident Evil films go, however, I kind of still feel like Resident Evil Vendetta is my favorite. This movie did not dethrone that as my favorite. Yes, that movie does have some over-the-top scenes as well, but to me personally, nothing beats that scene with Chris and Leon in the hallway doing their John Wick shit and shooting a bunch of zombies. That scene is awesome. This movie doesn't really have anything like that. Like I said, the ending is a little over the top. Seems like everybody just starts pulling out rocket launchers and who can have the biggest rocket launcher. The one thing I did like about this though is all the characters look exactly like they do in some of the newer Resident Evil remakes, like Resident Evil 2 remake and Resident Evil 3 remake. The characters look pretty much identical to those remakes, especially Jill and Claire. I'm not 100% on Leon or Chris, but they look identical in my opinion, and they look great. I just feel like some of the storyline in this was just forgettable. It's just, okay, you're on Alcatraz and some shit's going down and there's, zombies and there's monsters and we're gonna blow a bunch of shit up. That's pretty much all I really remember about it. There's some bad guy, of course, but I couldn't tell you who it was. The movie was fun. It's just an average right down the middle for me. But if you haven't seen any of these movies, I mean, maybe start at the beginning and just watch through them. If you want to watch, in my opinion, the best one, I would say go watch Vendetta, but I would still recommend it. It was still fun, especially if you're a Resident Evil fan and you know these characters, you would probably still have fun with it regardless. It's better than pretty much all the live action movies, especially that new one. Jeez. I still would recommend this, and it's on Netflix, so go check it out.
As always, we thank you so much for watching. Leave us a comment if you have any horror movie recommendations, and we will add them to our watch list. Until next time.